let's look at the word Pesach. Because if you remember in the previous slide, what we discussed was the first festival that Israel had was Pesach. So what is Pesach? Pesach is Passover. Dear children of Israel, what is the purpose of Pesach? Bullet point 1, the lamb's blood is shed so that the Malik Mavet passes over us. This is the angel of death. Okay, so you can say Malik or Malik Mavet. This is the angel of death passes over us. Does this lamb have anything to do with sin? No, it does not. Chametz has to do with the sin. Chametz is yeast. Bullet point 2. Yeshua is the manna from heaven without chametz. We'll come back to that. Bullet point 3. The purpose for shedding the blood has nothing to do with sin as much as it has to do with bondage to death. When you are a slave, it takes an outside source to tell you that you're a slave. Some would say sin is bondage. Not here. Please stay on topic. Sin is not the bondage. Death in Mitzrayim is the bondage. Bullet point 4. Nothing about Pesach has to do with covering of sin. Bullet point 5. It has everything to do with exposing sin. This is why bullet point 5. It has everything to do with the exposing of sin. This is why we walk around the house with a candle and a spoon to get the last of the chametz. Bullet point 6. Think about what Hashem told Moshe to tell Pharaoh. Let my people go so that they may worship me in the wilderness. The first step to worship is the exposing of the sin. Step 2 is to shed the blood so that death passes over you. This is called a ransom. Step 3, you get to escape bondage because someone else exchanged something for your freedom, life for life. So the fourth part of this is stop focusing on the sin. Pesach is not a sin thing, it's a life and death thing. Someone from the outside is telling us to remove sin from the house because in 7 months we're going to have Yom Kippur. So there's a lot to unpack here. I understand that most people in Christianity, you guys celebrate Easters. Easters is not in the Bible that as a holiday that we should be following. Now, just like I had made mention a little while ago concerning myself and suggesting that you take this before Hashem yourself in regards to should you be worshiping the Messiah, the same question, even if you write down a prayer list for yourself and write down these things that whether or not you're supposed to be doing them and take them in your prayer closet and discuss with Hashem what you're supposed to be doing. The next thing on that list is what holidays are you supporting and why? Like, are you intentionally turning your chin up towards the pagan aspects of the holiday just so you can be with your family? Now consider this. If you're head of household, whether you're a husband or a wife, and respectively, if you're a wife and you're a single mom, you're head of household if you're not living with your parents. Remember what it says in the commandments, and specifically in Genesis, it says, for this reason, in regards to marriage, a man shall leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. Now, if you're leaving your mother and father, that means that you have to weigh out what traditions you're bringing with you when you leave the home. Why? Why are you having to weigh this out? Why am I, what's the point? Because of what it says in the commandments, and then also what it says in Exodus chapter 34, that Hashem visits the sin of the father and the grandfather, great-grandfather, to the third and the fourth generation. And it's our responsibility to take these matters to Hashem and say, are we supposed to be doing them or not? And I had to do them with my own family. I understand that I have caused offense in my own family. And if my family is watching this and reading this, I apologize to you if you feel like I'm offending you, but it has actually nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with whether I'm causing offense to Hashem first and wanting you to come and participate in what Hashem wants us to do. And there comes a point in our lives, and I had to do this for myself, is what's more important? Is it more important for me to make sure that I'm doing what Hashem needs me to do for myself and my family? Or is it more important to celebrate with extended family. And of course it's important to celebrate with extended family, but in the way that Hashem wants us to do it, not in the way that we would do. Because what does it say in the scriptures too? You shall not do as you are today, everyone doing what is right in their own eyes. And this is the standard. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither male nor female, but one new man in Messiah who's pointing us to the Father. That means it's going to be different than the way that we've been accustomed to doing things. If we're doing what the Torah says, then we're in compliance with the life and the blessing of the Lord. Why? Because you shall choose on this day what you shall do. Choose life and blessing or curses and of evil. But that's only if you've accepted God, the God of the Jews, as your Hashem Elohim. And not just doing it because your family did it. You have a personal responsibility. So let's examine Pesach further. So for those of you who don't know, Pesach is like there's a time period that leads up to Pesach. We know this time period, and during the week before, you're supposed to go through your house, and this is where the term spring cleaning comes from. You're supposed to go throughout all your house, and you're supposed to make sure that all of the chametz is out of your house. Chametz is yeast. So when you pick up a pack of bread and it says it's got yeast in there, you're supposed to take it out of the house. So that means when you go to the grocery store, typically like maybe 2 to 3 weeks before Pesach, you want to make sure that you're not buying long shelf products that have yeast in them. So leavening is another way of saying it. So does that mean the yeast ingredient in order to bake bread, does that mean it has to go out of the house? How about you take it before Hashem? How about you investigate that? I'm not saying yes or no. I'm saying for myself and for my family, if it says to take it out, that means we take it out of the house. So the very night before Pesach, we're supposed to take a candle and a spoon, and we're supposed to scrape the last bit of chametz or crumbs with the spoon and take it out of the house, and we're supposed to burn it. What does the chametz have to do with anything? Well, in the New Testament, you guys are familiar with leavening being sin. So why are you taking sin out of the house? Okay, try to examine for a moment that if I'm looking in my house, like in every single room in the house, looking for crumbs, if I'm vacuuming, if I'm sweeping, the whole idea is that we're being meticulous in all areas of the home, in all areas of our heart, that we're supposed to be removing the things that are not of Hashem and getting it out of our house. It just creeps in throughout the year. It just, when you're eating, when you're partaking, when you don't recognize that this stuff comes into your life. So you're looking for it. You're exposing the sin. You're exposing the things of Hashem that are not here. You just take it and you take it out. It doesn't have to be a dramatic thing. So that's the first part. But on Pesach, the night, we paint the blood over the doorpost. Some people still do it. Some people don't do it. In the first generation, when Pesach was first invented, they did it. They took the lamb's blood, and posted and painted it on the left portion of the lintel, the left portion, the doorpost, the right portion, the right doorpost, and then the lintel over the door. This was to signify to the Melech Mavet, the angel of death, to pass over that home. Same kind of situation with Yeshua. Pesach is the removing of death out of your life. Okay, some fun facts. Mitzrayim, Egypt. The word Mitzrayim is the root word for Egypt. The root word for Mitzrayim itself is the word tsor. It's Tsadi, Dalet, Vav, Resh, if I remember correctly. Tsor in Hebrew means bondage. So when Hashem says, with an outstretched arm, I have taken you from the land of bondage, He's being extremely literal because that's what the word Egypt means in its root sense. It literally means bondage, which is one of the reasons why I think that Egypt had a name change. It went from Mitzrayim to Egypt. So if Hashem is rescuing us from bondage, what is he bringing us into? Well, he's bringing us into life and fullness. But now, look at the history of Israel. They were in Israel. They were in Egypt because they were invited there. Hashem brought them there because of because of famine in the land. 430 years later, there's under heavy bondage in Egypt. And just because Hashem wants to display his name, he takes them out into the wilderness for 40 years. Now, it's written that from Mitzrayim, from Egypt to Israel is only a 3-day journey. You can walk there in 3 days. But it took 40 years for them to go around in the wilderness. 1 year for each day that the 12 spies went up into the land of Jericho. If they would have just listened to Hashem, they just would have went up and been there in 3 days. But they didn't. They were skeptical. And they didn't believe the word of Hashem. Regardless, when Hashem pulled them out, they pulled them into the wilderness to train them, to show them what the acts of service were going to be. All 7 Hebraic festivals, from Pesach, which is in Nisan, the month of Nisan, to Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur we'll talk about that in the next video. But they needed training. They needed a time to not only leave the land of bondage, but the bondage had to be taken out of them. And if they would have just done what Hashem had said, the process would have taken 7 months to create all of the temple artifacts. And then, before the temple, it would have been the Mishkan, right? The Mishkan was the tent of meeting, or the tabernacle itself. They would have created all the artifacts. They would have created all the priestly garments. They would have had everything ready to go for the government of Hashem, so that when they got to Jerusalem, they just had to set it up. But it wasn't like that. Because of Israel's consistent disobedience, and then even the golden calf incident, they ended up having to continue to do laps in the wilderness. Kind of sounds like what we do, right? If we would just do what Hashem tells us to do, and do it as a community and not try to do it by ourselves, it'd probably be a little bit easier in our lives. But what do? We're stubborn, we're stiff-necked, we don't listen to the Hashem, we don't do the commandments, and then we do laps, and we have this calamity that continues to befall us time and time again. So what's my point in all this? My point in all this is, if we as a community, when's the last time we ever took 7 months to discover whether or not we should be doing the things that we do in church services or Messianic Jewish services? When's the last time we took 7 months as a collective, as a whole, as a community, to understand what goes on in the Israeli Institute of Levitical Studies? When's the last time we took 7 months as a congregation, as a team, as a group of people, really trying to seek Hashem to do anything? And that's what I'm proposing to you, is we need to take that time and do that from community to community. Okay, so in the next video, let's talk about Yom Kippur.